Jeff for giving an introduction to my methodology here, because it's largely sort of anthropological or ethnographic rather than philosophical. I'm an ethnographer who's an aspiring philosopher, so I'll appreciate the feedback from the philosophers, as you did yesterday, with regard to how I'm approaching some of my ethnographic fieldwork. So this is something that I was thinking about as I was going through my field sites and comparing Prakriti, the way that Prakriti is used across field sites. It's not the same. So we've been hearing a lot about hybridity and the polyvalency of different words in philosophy and how they take on different meanings. And so also as I traveled through my field sites, which I'll present to here, Prakriti is it's not the same, and in many ways how we would expect it to not be the same, as we'll see in these field sites, based on context. And so what I want to do is just present very preliminary data that I gathered regarding Prakriti in practice, as I'm calling it here. One is at Yoga Ananda Ashram, and the other is at Polestar Gardens in Hawaii. So, to value Prakriti or not to value Prakriti, that is the question for this paper. This paper will follow Prakriti as a category of ethnographic research through two yoga communities, Yoga Ananda Ashram in Amityville, New York, and Polestar Gardens on the Big Island of Hawaii. So over the past few years, I've spent practicing yoga in both of these contexts. As the data I collected in each of these places shows, the Samkhya category of Prakriti is just as polyvalent in practice in modern yoga communities as Knut Jakobsen has identified it to be within the Samkhya yoga tradition itself. I'll begin with Yoga Ananda Ashram and then I'll move to the Big Island of Hawaii before making some concluding observations as I compare the deployment of the term Prakriti in both of these communities. So, Bengali native Garani Anjali, who you see pictured here on the right, founded Yoga Ananda Ashram on Long Island in Amityville, New York in 1972. Having immigrated to America's East Coast in the 1960s, along with numerous other gurus from India after the passing of the 1965 Hart-Celler Act, Anjali found herself amidst America's countercultural revolution, rife with progressive environmental and social activism. Founded as a nonprofit organization with the stated mission to lead practitioners toward self-realization, Anjali's Yoga Ananda Ashram received students from many walks of life during a period when Americans were trying to find their bearings in the wake of increasing environmental destruction, war, economic liberalism, and a growing consumer culture. In order to address some of society's most pressing concerns, Anjali disseminated forms of yoga practice undergirded by the Samkhya yoga system, adapted from her own ashram training in Calcutta. These practices were aimed toward attenuating students' self-interest, while enriching their relationships with one another, as well as with the rhythms and elements of the surrounding oceanic landscape. Collectively, Anjali referred to these phenomena as Prakriti. In exchange for their devotion to Prakriti, the nonprofit's mission assured community members self-realization by the direct experience of witness consciousness, Purusha. A meditation that I participated in the current Long Island Ashram in 2016 captures the community's ongoing transmission of Anjali's teachings, as well as the community's understanding of Prakriti. For the first portion of the meditation, we, about 20 students, were instructed with little introduction to chant the Gayatri Mantra, followed by a song acknowledging the intricacies of each of the elements, Prithvi, Jal, Agni, Vayu, Akash. Next, we collectively sang one of Anjali's songs called Meditation, the chorus of which repeatedly stated, quote, "Beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the senses, beyond you and me," end quote. Following this group singing, all who were gathered passively listened to a solo male vocalist sing a song called Mahadeva, the lyrics of which went as follows. Om Sundaram, Mahadeva Sundaram, Om Namo Namo, Namo Namo, Mahadeva Sundaram. Should I sing it? Yeah. These mountains, these valleys, the earth below, the sky, the birds, the breath in me, the waves of the ocean, the sound of the wind, they tell me it's you, they tell me it's you. Is that good so far?
Very good, that's good.
It's still remember the tune. And it keeps going. These feelings, these senses, this heart of mine, the babies, the aged, the hungry and the despised, the sunrise in the morning, the dew on the grass, they tell me it's you, they tell me it's you. After completing the song, we were instructed to just feel the presence and sat in silence for several minutes. Shortly thereafter, in the second portion of the morning meditation, several students read detailed dedications to each of the elements, both from ashram publications and translated Sanskrit texts, some of which were Dr. Chappell's. And we were also silently chanting the names of each element. So, for example, Prithvi, Prithvi, Prithvi was chanted for earth. We were also instructed to perform dharana, concentration, gazing upon each element. For example, a pile of earth that was collected from outside for periods of silence. Throughout this entire process, we were encouraged to recognize the correspondences between the elements in each of our own bodies and the element upon which we were concentrating. For example, the water upon which we gazed, we were told, was the same as the water in our saliva and in the blood that was pumping through our veins. And similar correspondences were recognized for each of the other elements. The dharanas progressed through each of the elements from gross, earth and water, to increasingly subtle, fire, air, and space. Afterward, we were told to face each of the four cardinal directions as well as to look up and down. To the east, we were told to acknowledge the direction of the rising sun, as well as an Om symbol hanging on the ashram's eastern wall. To the south, we took in the fullness of day and all the activity of daily life taking place outside the yoga studio's storefront window. To the west, we acknowledged the location in which the sun sets at day's end, and finally to the north, the direction of night and the unknown, where we gazed upon a picture of Gurani Anjali hanging on the northern wall. Next, we are instructed to look up to the heavens, then down to the earth, and finally to put our palms together at our chest and look within. We once again recalled the correspondences between outer and inner space via the elements and senses, and the ways in which our internal emotionality was directly influenced by our experience in the external elemental world. To complete the meditation, we are instructed to sing Anjali's song, Do What You Can. I am doing what I can. Are you doing what you can? I am doing what I can. Are you doing what you can? Do what you can. I'll do what I can. Do what you can. I'll do what I can. And on and on. So to summarize this whole thing, the chanting and singing in the first part of the meditation began with a mapping of experience through the prism of the tattvas of Samkhya Yoga. We chanted the Mahavyakriti, the Bhur Bhuva Swa, and the Gayatri Mantra, acknowledging the totality of phenomenal reality, or in this case, maybe Vyakta Prakriti, as indicated by Bhur Bhuva Swa, as well as the nature of this reality's interaction with consciousness, that is Purusha, as symbolized by the sun, Savitur. The two subsequent songs to the elements and the senses, undertaken in that order, reduce this totality into its fundamental physical, that is Prithvi, Jal, Agni, Vayu, Akash, earth, water, fire, air, space, and increasingly subtle components as we move through the body, the mind, the senses, and a sense of ego, as captured in the song verse that I read before, you and me. Seemingly terminating in Mula Prakriti, as one of Anjali's former students conveyed to me afterward. And so much of this is my interpretation of what's happening, but Steve Crimi, who used to live at the ashram, I asked him, what does this all mean? And he said, quote, a lot of what Anjali was trying to get us to see was that ground, the Mula Prakriti, because once you're in touch with that through meditation or some sort of practice and realize yourself as Mula Prakriti, then the manifest becomes sacred. Once you have that, you can't lose it, and it's always there for you, end quote. So, and then the final song of the first meditation, Mahadeva, seems to convey this experience. The singing male voice, which was much better than mine, I guarantee you, reflects a devotional attitude toward all of manifest and unmanifest reality, Prakriti, all of which serves to reflect pure consciousness, Purusha, in the line, quote, they, that is, the tattvas of Prakriti, tell me it's you, that is, Purusha, through the medium of the human body. In the second part of the meditation, Words were used to achieve identification between practitioners' minds, bodies, senses, and the elements, while periods of intentional silence and sensorial immediacy with the elements allowed the group to receive the symbolism in each external phenomenon and to experience the connection between inner emotional and outer material worlds. As the elements move from gross to subtle, so too does the group's collective awareness. And as the elements and the collective awareness remain united throughout the meditation, the group eventually attains a mode of perception akin to space or akasha itself, which resembles, though still imperfectly, pure consciousness, purusha. Viraj, a former member of the ashram community, conveys the experience quite eloquently as follows, quote, "It is only through the cultivation of a sattvic or clear outlook that one can learn to accommodate the purusha in terms of both entering into the vision and living out the vision through effective action. Buddhi can, after the backward glance to the purusha, from which it derives the knowledge that generates the partial visions of mortals, manifest and nourish body worlds, which, through faith, count on the purusha. The conflict and confusion that marked the pre-vision personality can now be overcome as long as one lives and acts with a devotion to unity and wholeness. The totality descends into the prakritic realm through and in our everyday actions." So within the prakritic realm, what he's calling the prakritic realm, the ashram community created, during its heyday, local nonprofit education and environmental awareness programs, support for women and children, as well as encouragement and support with practices of austerity and non-participation in consumer culture. Spread along and around the built environment on Merrick Road in Amityville, New York, the city space was transformed by, in addition to the ashram itself, which you see here on your left, second floor, a popular vegetarian restaurant, which you see them putting up the sign there, Santosha, a health food store, a community education center, a bookstore, a publishing house, children's education program, women's support group, and an art gallery featuring the work of local artists, all of which were open to the public and operated mainly through unpaid voluntary service provided by working ashram members and full-time students. Anjali's vision resulted in a demographically diverse nonprofit ashram community. His membership included drug addicts, I was told, minorities, and a whole host of other individuals. All of the ashram's establishments and membership, along with the ongoing practice of a rather austere Samkhya yoga lifestyle that I have briefly summarized here, arose in Suffolk County, which, according to voting records that I looked at, was politically conservative up until the 5 years preceding Anjali's 2001 death, and is again in 2016, as we saw with all of the vote Trump signs everywhere in Amityville. So in sum, at Yoga Anand Ashram, Prakriti was engaged and valued as the entry point through which Purusha could be experienced through one's sensorial, embodied engagement with Long Island's social and environmental landscape. So that's Yoga Anand Ashram. And Chris and Maureen, as former members, can tell you if I got it right or not. Okay. All right, so let us now enter Polestar Gardens, a community founded in the name of Paramahansa Yogananda, who, with the blessings of his guru, Sri Yukteswar, boarded a ship to America in 1920 in order to attend the International Conference of Religious Liberals in Boston, Massachusetts. Combining Hatha Yoga and a monistic Advaita Vedanta metaphysics, Yogananda's aim, like that of his guru, was to teach what he called original Christianity through Kriya Yoga and the universality of religion in order to lead his followers also to self-realization. Institutionalizing his teachings, Yogananda founded the Self-Realization Fellowship. And we have a member here, Jensen, who can also let us know if we get this right. And he eventually establishing the SRF's headquarters at Mount Washington here in Los Angeles in 1925. As well as his first intentional community, which is something that not too many people know about, which he called a World Brotherhood Colony, a little over a decade later in Encinitas, California, which is where the Self-Realization Temple still stands today. Though the SRF discontinued Yogananda's colony project, some of Yogananda's disciples continued to create and maintain colonies around the country. Most notable among these disciples was Swami Kriyananda, who founded several colonies, including Ananda Village in 1968 in Nevada City, California. Has anyone been up there? Yeah, of course. In addition to Kriyananda, a number of other disciples also formed World Brotherhood colonies, including Michael and Anne Gornick. And this is Michael right here, and also leading exercises right here. Sorry, I don't know why I don't have a picture of Anne. She's never in any of the pictures. So Michael and Anne, following the termination of their 20-year membership at Ananda Village, formed the nonprofit organization Polestar Education in Sonoma County, California in 1998. Here they began to create what would eventually become Polestar Gardens. With the encouragement of a friend from Ananda Village, the Gornicks decided in 2005 to move Polestar to the agricultural district in the Puna area on the Big Island of Hawaii. Who's been to Puna? Yeah. There's two Punas. There's Puna in India, and there's Puna. But there's World Brotherhood colonies in both, so I can see why you mix them. So Puna is a fun place, as those of you who have been know. Here they established an intentional community to continue to teach Yogananda's Raja and Kriya yogas. So the organization's yoga practices reflect the imperatives of Yogananda's inner search for the divine, which in a sense demoted property, a practice undergirded by Yogananda's own view of property, captured quite well in his translation of chapter 4, verse 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, as posted on the wall at Polestar. So this is up on the wall at Polestar, and I've zoomed in here so you can see it a little bit better, but it says, "Unborn though I am, of changeless essence, yet becoming Lord of all creation, abiding in my own cosmic nature, Prakriti, I embody myself by self-evolved Maya delusion." Polestar's own understanding of Prakriti became quite clear during one of the community's weekly philosophy and meditation discussions. Here, founder Michael Gornick disseminates Polestar's organizational philosophy while inviting students to share various aspects of Yogananda's teachings. On this particular night, the community cook and gardener David Zuhars volunteered to share his research on Yogananda's guru, Sri Yukteswar, in his book, The Holy Science, which you see pictured here. Has anyone read Holy Science? It's a great book. It was written in 1894 and contains Yukteswar's teachings on astrology, Kriya Yoga, and his Advaita Vedanta and theosophically inspired version of Samkhya metaphysics. David presents to the audience a picture of Yukteswar's elaborate diagram of the tattvas, which you see here from the Holy Science, page 28, and begins by explaining the elements, which we see down here. And then we're going to work up, right? And begins by explaining the elements, backing into his understandings of the Gyanendriyas, the Karmendriyas, the Tanmatras, Manas, ego, and Buddhi, and all the way up. All of these phenomena are charted according to their correspondence to the physical body, astral body, and causal body, and provide a map, as David explains to us, to Sat Chit Ananda, the top. After David summarizes the diagram of the tattvas, founder Michael Gornick interjects and says, quote, "Ah, that's very interesting. But what we really want to focus on here is the Sat Chit Ananda. I tried reading Yukteswar's book and it's way over my head. But what I have learned from my experience is that if we sit quietly every day and focus on the third eye in meditation, we can experience the true goal of the system, which is Sat Chit Ananda. Everything else is unnecessary if you can get that." End quote. When Michael has finished speaking, a student who is visiting the community for a meditation retreat asks, quote, "But can I meditate with my eyes open? I feel like I came to Hawaii to experience and connect with nature, and for me that is a meditation. Why do we always have to sit with our eyes closed?" End quote. It's really sad. Michael responded, quote, "Yogananda once taught that Prakriti is Maya and everything is an illusion. He said that once you harmonize with your inner nature, then you will be in harmony with outer nature. So in order to get in touch with nature, we must first go inward toward the bliss, which is what Yukteswar's diagram is talking about." End quote. Michael pointed back, as I'm doing, at David's diagram and smiled enthusiastically. The student's question reflected a wider apprehension from visitors and resident members alike. Polestar's quotidian emphasis of the bliss to be found in meditation in the ongoing unidirectional inward orientation of Polestar's meditation techniques frequently found friction with participants who came to Hawaii, and specifically to Puna, to participate in the area's abundant nature. How many people have been to Hawaii? Okay, so at least we know what that's like. One graduate student and a friend of mine visiting from the California Institute of Integral Studies reflected this concern more bluntly when he told me, quote, "They are such lovely people, but Polestar doesn't fit here. Pune is such a sensual place. Nature and the elements are so intense here, and it is so feminine. People come here to let go and explore sensuality, but Polestar tells them they should not. Why do I need to come here to close my eyes and meditate when I can do that at home?" End quote. That's my friend Deepak. I don't know if anybody knows Deepak Bansal. Yeah, he told me I could quote him. Like my friend here, many came to Polestar because the community's website advertises yoga and meditation in paradise. What they find when they enter the community, however, is that the natural paradise of which the website speaks is an inner paradise, pursued for 3 hours per day in meditation, 1 hour and 15 minutes in the morning, 1/2 hour in the afternoon, and 1 hour and 15 minutes in the evening. These meditations begin with Yogananda's energization exercises, followed by a brief chanting session, and then approximately 1 hour of Yogananda's Hamsa breathing technique. And so, just so you can see, these are the energization exercises here. Has anyone done them? I know Jensen has. Yeah, you have too. Yeah. Okay, so there's some familiarity, and then the meditation, frequent meditation there. For those with more advanced training, Yogananda's Om technique is then taken up, and finally for the initiated, further practices of the techniques of Kriya Yoga. In my own experience, I constantly caught myself in awe of the sunrise as it came through the clouds over the ocean each morning, and found other students to be doing the same. When we were caught by the morning meditation leader, we were immediately told to keep our eyes closed and focus on the third eye. That's so frustrating. Similarly, during energization, we were to keep our eyes closed and concentrate our will on the third eye in meditation. In meditation, we were to sit silently with our eyes closed as we did the same. During my own participation in the energization exercises, before both the 1 hour morning and 1 hour evening meditations, I did experience a sense of rejuvenation, relaxation, and readiness to sit concentrated in meditation for prolonged periods of time. As Jensen was telling me yesterday, this is like really intended to strengthen the will, and what Yogananda referred to as recharging the body battery, to prepare you to be able to sit for meditation, essentially. And apparently there's a shortcut, but it's not for the uninitiated, right? So yeah, we can talk about that. So I experienced this rejuvenation, and it helped me prepare for meditation. And what I found most interesting, however, were specific psychosomatic effects that began to take place during the rest of the day. A particularly apt example of this phenomena occurred one morning not too long after my arrival, while I was on a hunt for a cup of coffee during breakfast. Polestar does not serve coffee, just so you know. Some residents, though, have private stashes that they're willing to share with desperate newbies like myself. Coming straight from graduate school, where I was up to 3 to 4 cups per day, I'll admit it, to make it through the gauntlet of teaching, seminars, and examinations, I had nevertheless made a commitment to myself to stop drinking caffeine during my time in the field. Feeling sorry for my strong caffeine withdrawal headache one morning, however, a friend in the community offered me her cup on the back of an eye toward the end of breakfast. As I reached out to grab it, however, I saw that my desire for the coffee was suddenly overcome by my initial intention to stop drinking coffee altogether. Though it sounds strange, and it certainly took me by surprise at the moment, I watched my desire for my friend's coffee turn into a mental thought, yes, I will drink that coffee, which turned into an impulse that traveled through my right arm, and then reached out to take the cup. Has anyone taken John Casey's class? He has this Samkhya and a cup of coffee. I don't know if he's yeah, you know this? Yeah.
Okay. Actually, you have your impulse and then the thought appears. That's what they are saying.
Yes. So, the impulse and the muscles required to undertake this action were the same muscles, I realized at that moment, that I had been contracting and controlling while focusing on the space between my eyebrows during the practice of energization, which we saw only a short while earlier on the back lawn before breakfast. Remembering then my deeper intention to quit caffeine, I was overcome by an overpowering sense of restraint and felt the process reverse. My hand and arm withdrew themselves from the cup. I felt the impulse travel back up my arm to my head and terminate in the thought, I didn't want to drink coffee. However it worked, Polestar's exercises had reinforced my deeper intentions, resulting in greater self-control and a renewed and perhaps healthier relationship to manifest property. So in conclusion, and I don't think there's any hard conclusions here, except that I'm trying to make some broad comparisons of property that might be fleshed out further. Property, like yoga, remains a polyvalent term subject to the specific socio-cultural conditions in which it is deployed. As I hope to have shown here very briefly, property is thus central for defining the mind-body world and our appropriate relationship to this world, and as a result, is a category that's at least deserving of our careful ethnographic attention in the study of modern yoga in communities where it's deployed. Modern yoga communities continue to offer varying models to approach and give meaning to our embodied experience in the world. The term prakriti is deployed in diverse ways to describe this experience, and in one way, shape, or form, our relationship to manifest prakriti must somehow be reformed. At Yoga Anandashram, prakriti is embodied within the social and environmental landscape and one's own psychosomatic experience therein. She is released from undue attachment and worshipped as a means to reveal the independent witness Purusha. At Polestar Gardens, prakriti is demoted according to Advaita Vedanta philosophy, which, as I'm now showing elsewhere in something else I'm writing, reflects Yogananda's adaptation of yoga to the otherworldly ontology of his Protestant American audience in the 1920s. Rather than worshipped, prakriti is in the most extreme cases rejected at Polestar, though as community members and visitors' comments reveal, a thirst remains for intimacy with prakriti that is magnified, of course, by the allure of the Hawaiian landscape. Despite these differences, what Yoga Anandashram and Polestar share, however, is a commitment to purifying one's relationship to prakriti's subtle and gross manifestations by relinquishing undue attachment to the manifest world without rejecting it at Yoga Anandashram. In return, both may have something valuable to offer in our shared times of environmental and political uncertainty. Thank you.
Comments and questions? Jeff?
No one else? I don't want to hog the
Hog the floor.
Okay. Chris, that was so great. I love revisiting Hawaii. And
Maureen and I love revisiting Long Island.
and I can almost feel all those elements. I was just in Hawaii last week at the crater of the volcano at night. And I've never felt so strongly fire, element of fire. And there's this experience, you have all the elements that are in Big Island. And there's this, if you allow your mind to, there's this experience of, this realization of tattvam asi. Or rather, in this case though, I am that. And it's taught me so much about Samkhya, pulling me away from maybe some of my own assumptions, my own biases, that Samkhya is teaching a kind of denigration of prakriti, a denigration of our lived reality, when in fact the realization of neti proceeds by way of the realization of I am that. One cannot have an authentic realization of neti without first realizing you are that. And it happens by way of, and this, you seem to, I think this is consistent with your presentation, it happens by way of an absorption, not a recognition of something that is external to me and then I just happen to realize that, identical with that, but a recognition of some aboriginal unity between the myself as an ego and the empirical object. Does this seem consistent with what you learned and the way that they study these texts?
Yeah, I think that's really, thank you. That's really what I'm trying to say is there's like that microcosmic, macrocosmic correspondence that arises in the practice, and specifically, I mean, at Yoga Anandashram, what I find most fascinating in what I'm doing in my dissertation research is showing that you can have that experience in pretty much any elemental landscape. where you are with these dharanas, or just by being with the elements. And when you go to the big island, as you're describing, you go to Kilauea and you go to that volcano, there is no place where I have felt more overwhelmed by the elements than that area, and specifically, yes, that place, because you have the lava flowing into the water, and you have this whole alchemical process taking place on the coast, and the steam rising up, and the wind blowing off the ocean, smelling like salt. It's just an incredible sensory experience. And so I think that, I think what you're describing, that absorption, it is sort of primordial, and I find that at Yogananda Ashram, it's being enacted through these practices, or Anjali was trying to lead people into that in this increasingly urban yet coastal landscape. And then alternatively, what I found at Polestar was people were wanting that, and that's why they were coming to Hawaii, and that's why, Puna, you've been to Puna, they were coming for that experience, and yet they couldn't, they weren't really allowed necessarily to have that. It was a unidirectional, inward kind of thing, but people were still having that experience anyways on their own, in a way, and that's why they wanted to keep their eyes open and, keep their senses going. It was sort of tantric in a way. Yeah. Good things.
Jensen, you have a comment or a question?
That was great. I love it.
Did I get the body battery and everything right?
Yeah.
Okay, Lydia.
I just wanted to make a comment. I love the picture of the ashram neighboring the exterminators. It's like modern methods in extermination for Sapphic living.
Thank you for pointing that out. Actually, I didn't even think about it when I was preparing this. But yes, the ashram, as you see in the Santosha vegetarian dining, are built next to a modern method termite control exterminator. And what some of the members of the ashram told me when we visited is that in the basement there, they found tons of chemicals, pesticides and things that they had to call, hazmat team to get rid of. So yes, there is this, there's the gunas kind of going on here.
Yeah, and we could have bought this building and it would have been like $60,000 next to nothing. But because we didn't want responsibility for the chemicals, which undoubtedly had leached into the soil, we eventually moved the whole operation up the road to this other building that we had bought for $30,000, which is now where the ashram is located.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm wondering, Charlotte, if you could just share a little bit about your own experience of the elemental reflections that you've done in your yoga training.
Well, it was so nice to hear from Chris what we practiced at Hill Street. The dirt and bowl, the water in this beautiful round bowl, and the candle. And what my reflection was while you were speaking is what I understand and experience in Zen practice is looking outward and looking inward at the same time and erasing that either or. The gaze is downward in Zen meditation so that I had the reverse. I want to close my eyes, and when practicing Zen, the request and recommendation is to keep your eyes open. So that's interesting, to
So you have a
sense
reversal.
inwardness and see outwardness at the same time. And I think our years of practicing this dharana on the elements is probably more than anything else that has fertilized what I grew up with, a very close absorption, appreciation, experience of nature in my growing up at a camp, at a summer camp where I felt like we lived very close to nature, so that I try to let my yoga classes really have seasonalness in our sadhana. including our initial practice in history of gazing into the earth and the fire and the leaves. Very, very enriching.
And Charlotte Holzterman taught yoga here at LMU for 20 years, both in the dance department and through extension, and now teaches at Santa Monica College. Xiaochen first, and then back to Lydia.
I was just wondering, the date, you were mentioning the date with the earth element and non-earth element. How do you relate to casino? It's one of them.
Yeah, in the Vishuddhimagga, this practice, which Chris described, is actually described in detail. And I recently learned from rereading Iliade's book that there was a gentleman who tried to revive this in the 19th century to no avail. And because of some, I don't know what the experiences were, we're trying to research it, but it's hard to find out. The Vipassana community has more or less backed away from these elemental foci. And what this tradition, as well as a number of other texts, describe is a practice that is designed to bring that sense of intimacy. And it was a teaching of the Buddha himself, a teaching that he shared with his own son. And this is, I think, an overlooked aspect of yoga that can be quite energizing.
Well, but then you find these practices in all the traditions, like Buddhism, Jainism,
Yeah.
as in you explaining living landscapes, but the book is not published yet.
Not quite yet.
Okay.
I'm
But
supposed
I
to hear in 2 weeks if they gave me the green light. So, yeah,
So
it's forthcoming.
yeah, but you show that these practices are in the three traditions.
Very old, yeah.
So yeah, it was for me was very interesting.
Did you have a follow-up, Lydia?
Well, I just wanted to say, based on what Charlotte said, I thought it's kind of interesting because when we do sit in quiet stillness in nature, with our eyes open, it's almost like we get a teeny bit of perspective of Purusha in ourselves because we really get to be the observer of property. It's the most beautiful expression.
Yeah, that's really what I was hearing a lot of as I was reading through Anjali's work is in the songs are saying, tells me it's you. It's a reflection in a sense. Back, being in nature can cause a reflection, sort of as of wholeness, I guess you could say, of reintegration, which is sort of sounded like what Jeff was describing too. Primordial kind of wholeness. That there is something eternal, and goes all the way back to the Vedas, as you're showing in your book. It's the 5 elements. And then everything after that sort of tries to figure out how we are relating to those elements and what our role is in that world. And so nature has this incredible ability to provide the reflection back.
And one of these years, one of these yoga days, we'll bring the ashram singers back. They've toured California a couple of times. It's very small amounts of people show up, but the songs are really remarkable.
Mm.
All right, we're all very hungry. We need to be nurtured by mother food. So thank you.